Hi, thanks for inviting me to speak in this session. My name is Mary Williams. You can find me at mwilliams@aspb.org, and on Twitter, I'm at Plant Teaching. I'd like to talk to you today about ASPB's social media journey to support, amplify, nurture, and connect plant scientists, and my journey also. The ASPB is the American Society of Plant Biologists. It's nearly 100 years old. It was founded in 1924. It's a professional society for plant biologists. You may be familiar with our journals. We publish the Plant Cell and Plant Physiology and co-publish Plant Direct Journal. We're the founder of the plante.org website and community site. We also host several meetings every year. The annual meeting is the plant biology meeting. We also host regional and topical meetings. So if you're not familiar with us, please look us up and join us. So we were asked to talk about our journeys through social media, and that prompted me to look into the archives, and I found my first tweet, which was nearly 10 years ago. And I was at a conference on science policy and science communication. So I tweeted, here is an article that tells us why we need plant scientists and plant science educators. And I linked to an article in PNAS called Global Food Demand and the Sustainable Intensification of Agriculture. I'd like to thank two people who started me on my journey, and these are Sarah Blackford and Ruth Bastow from Society for Experimental Biology, Garnet, and Global Plant Council. They convinced me that Twitter was a good way to share the things I was working on, and they were, again, at the start of my journey. Thank you very much for that. Why I started was because I'd been hired in 2009 to develop the educational series Teaching Tools in Plant Biology. That's a feature of the plant cell. And as we started posting these on the journal website, I realized we didn't really have a good way of communicating about them to people. So thanks to Ruth and Sarah's nudging, I started these accounts. I started a Twitter account, a Facebook account, also a Scoop It account, which is sort of like a Pinterest bulletin board thing, which I don't use anymore, but it was great when I was using it. And I've got some more information on my poster, but we did a little study and found that really it was important to use both Facebook and Twitter to reach the audience we wanted to reach. Part of that is because Facebook has a much more international reach than Twitter does. And please, visit my poster and I can tell you more about that. I also wanted to point out that if you're just getting started on Twitter and you don't have a lot of followers, don't worry, it takes time to build up, but it'll happen. So that slide was from a 2012 presentation I made to the Plant Cell editorial board. And I was trying to convince the editors of the Plant Cell that social media was a good tool that we could use to communicate with authors and prospective authors about what we do at ASPB. And it was a bit difficult because some of them had this idea that social media was really just about angry cat memes and celebrity gossip and sort of something for kids. But I convinced them that it is in fact a legitimate and important way that we can share information. And I talked to them about the fact that just like in biology, simple signal amplification is very important. So we might put out one message, but other people will share and amplify that message. And so that's different than, for example, traditional media, where you might put out an ad or an article and it just sits there. Social media is a social network. So people share things amongst themselves, which is a very powerful part of social media. We established some goals, which were to raise the profile of the journal, to support the authors, and to provide the opportunity for dialogue. So this is another reason it's different than traditional media, is that it's a two-way street, and we can put out information and then hear how other people respond to the information we've sent out, which is very important in terms of helping us to direct what we do as a professional society. Here's an example of some of the ways we use it. But all of our journals put out a tweet and a Facebook post of every article with a link to the article to help promote the information that we publish. We also invite first authors to send us their profile, their little biography, and their picture, and we share these through the journal channels. It's a nice way of thanking them and congratulating them on getting their work published. But also, it's a little hard sometimes to say, hey, look at me, look what I did. But if it's simply a matter of sharing something the journal's already done, it maybe is a little bit easier to sort of say, hey, look at me, I got a plant cell paper. We also share information. For example, we have a 2022 focus issue on plant biotic interactions coming out. So I want to thank Linda Palmer and Suzanne Cholwick, who are in our subscriptions group, and they do the work of posting these things. Although it's free to use Twitter and Facebook, it does take time to format the posts and things. So it is something we're committed to doing, again, to support our authors. Another reason that we use these tools is because altmetrics is an alternative metrics. It's another way of measuring the impact of an article. And before an article has time to start accruing citations, you can see that the article is getting attention through this altmetric score. And the score is you can see a table that sums where all these different bits add up to make the altmetric score. And Twitter is actually very important because Twitter is public. Every time someone shares a link to this article, it adds to the altmetric score. So if you're not already using Twitter, but you're considering it, that's, I think, a good reason to at least join Twitter and start to amplify your work and your friends' work. Here's a tip. I've got more tips on my poster, but if in fact you are using multiple accounts or multiple platforms like we do, there are some tools that can make it a bit easier. For example, we use Buffer that allows us to post to LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook all at the same time. We also use TweetDeck, which allows us to tweet from multiple accounts with a single sign-in. And Katie Rogers is our community engagement administrator. She joined us a few years ago as a social media intern, but she's got a real skill at this. And so she's now in charge of a lot of the strategy and analytics we do to help guide how we use these tools. So if you have any questions about how to use social media in a sort of organizational capacity like this, I really recommend you get in touch with Katie. And you probably also know Katie, who's the host of our Plante Presents and Plante webinar series. Speaking of which, we have some recorded webinars that you might be interested in to learn more. One is called Social Media for Scientists, What, Why, and How. And the other is How Top Scientists Use Twitter to Support Their Research. So look on the Plante webinar, the Plante website, or contact me if you'd like direct links to these, but they're full of really useful information. Okay, so now we are where I am in my journey today. And we'll start with how I got interested in science in the first place. So I was a young person, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I discovered this great character called Mr. Spock from Star Trek. And it was immediately clear that that was who I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to look at evidence, make decisions completely based on logic without any complications like emotions or things like that. And I had this kind of dream that, in a perfect world, we could all just be essentially brains under a dome, right? And we could all contribute whatever our ideas were. And, that would, working together, we would, make the world a better place. But of course, this is a very naive way of thinking. And it also, I think, reveals sort of the privilege that I came from, in that I was able to see myself as someone who could contribute based upon the ideas in my head. And now I recognize that this is not true, right? It's not a level playing field. People have different abilities to access the structures of science. And that's where I am now in my understanding and thinking, is trying to think of what can we do to make science available to everyone who wants to participate. And of course, there are lots of reasons why it's inequitable. And this is a really nice image I got from New Scientist, where some of us see sort of blue skies, other people see barriers. So some of the factors that can influence whether or not we're able to contribute to science include access. Where are you born? Do you have access to a high school science teacher? Can you get into a university? Can you take the college prep classes you need to take? If you're at university, can you get access to maybe a research opportunity that will help you move into graduate school? And even once you get access and into science, then different people face different levels of discrimination and bias. There are microaggressions that can interfere with people's ability to contribute. Financial resources are another big issue. For example, can you afford to buy the laptop you need to do your work? Can you afford a subscription to a journal or the fees to attend a conference? Do you have the financial resources to perhaps get childcare if you get invited to attend a conference? Can you? And then, of course, there's all sorts of access of ability and accessibility and accommodations. Are you able to listen to this webinar? Yes, indeed, because it will be captioned. So I'd also like to thank two of my friends who have really inspired me and helping me to learn to think about this part of my journey. And these are David Asai and Veranda Montgomery. Two real, leaders, I think, in understanding how science is not a level playing field. We all have different challenges to overcome to participate. One of the things that David says a lot is we need to learn to listen to hear. And that is something that really resonates with me because it's easy to talk. It's much harder to listen, and it's much harder to listen to hear. And so again, that's where I am now. I'm learning to listen to hear. I'm trying to learn and understand what ASPB and I and others can do to help allow everyone to contribute to science, to the best of their ability. So I want to give a shout out to some of the people whose voices I'm currently listening to very hard right now. Asia Hightower, Edith Pierre-Jerome, and Imani Madison are three people who put together a bunch of resources, including the Front and Center Plant Science Instagram page. So if you use Instagram, I recommend you follow it. Some other voices are the LGBTQ plus plant scientists on Twitter, Timber Burnett, who's calling out the fact that there's only 2 genders on some of the forms that we use, Diversify Plant Sci, which curates a list of individuals you might invite to give a seminar. Black botanists, of course, introduced us to a lot of different people. Disabled in STEM raises awareness of some of these issues of accessibility. And so finally, I just want to mention a couple of resources we've developed. Changing Cultures and Climate is a webpage on Planté where you can find lots of information. And ASPB Forward is a new committee, again, focused and targeted with addressing the inequities and trying to resolve some of them so that we can all participate. I look forward to talking to you, and I also hope that you can meet me at my poster or connect with me on Twitter. So thank you very much, and I look forward to learning more from you. Thank you.